Audio check. This is John Weinberger.
All right, let's get a mic check for those online. Kate, can you confirm that you can hear us?
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Thank you.
Hey, well, it's 12 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Fast Planning Technical Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. The call to order is at 12 o'clock p.m. For introductions of technical committee members I see present, we have with us today Michael Threadley, Jenny Campbell, Shell Denton, Kate Duber, Lee Wooden, Lexi Green, Brett Nelson, John DePardis, Jason Olds, Tim Zinza sitting in for Bob Mustache, Corey Richardson, Lieutenant Mike Roberts, Bill Rogers, and John Weinberger. The only two committee members that don't see in the meeting at this time is from Jacob Heinrich and RJ Stump. Or RJ, are you online? It doesn't look like it at this time. Okay. I'll announce their presence for the media recording if they show up. But for Fast Planning staff and myself, Jackson Fox, Olivia Lunsford, Corey DiRitrigliano, and Deborah Todd. And then guests in the meeting today, we have Randy Bailey, Don Galligan, Jack Barnwell, Brian Wright, Clay Anderson, Megan Flory, and Al Beck. Is there anybody in the meeting that I missed announcing? If so, you can unmute yourself. State your name for the record. Yes, RJ. For the record, RJ Stump has joined us. Okay, that's who we have with us at this time. So let's move on to approval of the April 1st, 2026 meeting agenda. Can I get a motion on the agenda? Move to approve by Bill Rogers. Second. Second by Tim. Okay, any changes to today's agenda? the record, Jacob Murray for joining us. I'll just note that this is unusual, but there are no action items on today's agenda. So, but I think they're all going to be really interesting topics to discuss. All right, any objections to keeping the agenda as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider it approved. That takes us to approval of the March 4th, 2026 meeting minutes. Because 2 through 9 of the packet, can I get a motion on the minutes? Okay, move to approve by Jenny. Is there a second? Second by Brett. Okay, any edits to the minutes? Hearing none, anyone opposed to approval of the minutes as presented in the packet? Hearing no objection, we'll consider those approved. That takes us to staff working group and chair report. Beginning on page 10 of the packet, I'll run through the actions that were made by the policy board at their March 18th meeting, some of which relate to items on the agenda here today. They did approve the community transportation grant program. So as a reminder, we have $20,000 that we intend to give out in mini grants, maximum $5,000 per applicant this spring. The application period is open as of today. I believe the website is live and we will be accepting applications through April 28th. So the full month of April. At the close of the application period, we're going to hold a special meeting of the Project Enhancement Committee to score all of those projects and put them in priority order for consideration for approval by the policy board. Don't know yet quite how many we'll get, but my hope is that we get more applications to the amount of money that we set aside for this. And also, if we get more than $20,000 of applications, we may be requesting the policy board approve additional funding so that we can fund a few more than that 20,000. But the awards will be confirmed on May 20th at the next policy board meeting that month. The policy board also, with relation to the community transportation grant program, they removed the match requirement, the 10% match that we had in the application. The match requirement is gone away, but we did include language that if any applicant provided match or in-kind, that they'd get extra points in their application in the scoring process. So we worked it in that way. Also, we made the grant program open borough-wide. So not just fast planning's metropolitan planning area of Fairbanks North Pole, but it is going to be borough-wide. So we made those 2 adjustments based on the request. The policy board also approved the letter of support for the Basics Act, which I presented to the technical committee last month. And I did include all of the edits for the technical committee. And behind these action items, you'll see a copy of the final revised letter, which includes all the edits from the technical committee. The policy board did not make any further edits to the letter. And they did approve it, and it has been passed along to the congressional delegation. I will be providing a presentation and discussion of our support letter for the Chamber of Commerce at the Transportation Committee meeting on April 9th. So Thursday morning, to see if the Chamber would also like to send a letter of support for the Basics Act. And then scrolling down here on the action items, for electric vehicle charging stations, the policy board did decide on a final bundle of projects. I'll point to that page here in a moment as to what we had recommended and what they accepted at the March 18th meeting, but it does include the first bundle, the News Miner, Three Bears, the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center, Nolan Library Fairbanks, and North Pole Library in Pioneer Park. But again, I'll show you that here in a minute and discuss a little bit more about how that discussion unfolded. And then for the Chena Riverwalk project, we do have some decision points for the policy board with relation to the design of the project, maintenance, and funding. They have discussed this at the last 2 meetings, and they actually referred the Chena Riverwalk to the Walk, Ride, and Roll Advisory Committee for recommendations. which we held a special meeting on March 18th and presented those recommendations to the board on March 18th at their meeting. And those were presented to the board. And we had some brief discussion and they opened it up for a public comment period. Julie Jones of Festival Fairbanks was the only person that testified at that meeting. But because this meeting was so long, it went 3 hours, they actually postponed this to the next meeting, but they kept the public comment period open. So at the very start of the next policy board meeting on April 15th, we will be kicking off that meeting, continuing the public comment period to the Cheetah Riverwalk before they decide on any motions that they would like to make. Okay, Olivia, if you go to page 17, real quick. I just want to walk you through the discussion with the policy board, the recommendation we presented to them on the electric vehicle charging stations, which they accepted on March 18th. So there's 3 columns here. The first column on the left is the technical committee's recommendation to move forward with the public property locations only. In the middle there is the staff scoring results using the evaluation criteria that was adjusted by the technical committee and policy board through comments. So you can see what the high scoring locations were. And then on the right-hand column is the staff recommendation, which we put together a new bundle, which is a mix of technical committee's recommendation, scoring results, and a lot of side discussions with that we've had with technical committee members and policy board members. But just so real briefly, the Fairbanks Daily News Miner, that was selected in lieu of the borough admin building because it's a more publicly accessible location off Illinois Street. For North Pole, the mayor preferred an electric vehicle charging station we put at Three Bears as opposed to this property on Santa Claus Lane. And we did get a landowner letter from Three Bears, as well as we have an existing landowner letter from the News Miner, but according to Lauren Little, the chief engineer, we needed landowner letters to proceed forward with some of these private property locations. I still think there's some issues with the right-of-way acquisition process to deliver these to construction. So we're still going to sort that out behind the scenes, so the list may change at some point in the future, but the 4 public property locations would be the visitor center downtown, Noel Wing Library, North Pole Library. And the idea for the North Pole Library is that it would likely be a level 2 charging station, whereas the Three Bears location would be at level 3, so a fast charging station. So North Pole would have one of each in their community. And then Pioneer Park was put on there because it scored so highly in the scoring results. And we had discussion about, well, if we have one at Pioneer Park, then we need one at Carlson Center as well. They're in close proximity and may be redundant to each other. But we all agreed that Pioneer Park was a better location than Carlson Center for an EV charging station. So this is the first bundle, which has been advanced to the DOT design team to begin their design construction. But I'm assuming we're going to have a few more hurdles to get through to actually deliver some of these. The public property locations are much more straightforward than the private property. So I will keep you all updated as I learn more. And that concludes my staff report. Any questions on the policy board action items? Hey, hearing none, we'll move on to our public comment period. Is there any member of the public who wishes to provide testimony today? But anything not listed as an action item? And there are no action items, so even things on the agenda are fair game at this time. Don't see any in the room. Anyone online? Okay, not seeing anybody online, so we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Move on to old business, Cheetah Riverwalk Stage 3 project update. Which begins on page 18 of the packet. So as I stated in my staff report, the Cheetah Riverwalk has been on the policy board agenda for a couple of meetings, and it will continue at their April 15th meeting for some potential motions to make with relation to the future of this project. But as shown on page 18, you can see the current alignment as designed for the pedestrian bridge to Pioneer Park along the route on Pega Road is in a separated path along Pegger Road up to Phillips Field Road. And then behind that is my staff memo to the policy board on some of these decision points with relation to the design, just as a refresher. Or page. On the design side, the construction estimate has risen from 1.7 million up to 7.1 million. Largely due to the cost of the boardwalk structure. That's 1,378 linear feet along the riverfront there. The current design tries to keep the path alignment outside of the floodway. But we've heard since from the community planning department that that's a permitting exercise. Potentially there could be construction in the floodway. And really the next step for this project is to hire a structural engineer to take a look at the design, a geotechnical team and hydrology team to see what is possible to permit within the floodway in hopes that we can shorten the length of the boardwalk to some extent to reduce the overall cost of construction of the project. So since the boardwalk is the most expensive component. So this is a decision point for the policy board on how to move forward with this price tag of the design. On the maintenance side, again, there is no signed maintenance agreement currently for the project. Previously, the project was moving forward underneath a maintenance agreement signed between the railroad and the city of Fairbanks under a land use permit. But now that the right-of-way acquisition option is outright purchase of the property, there's no need for that permit to exist any longer. But there are a few different dynamics here on the maintenance side. One is the portion of the path along Pegger Road is within the DOT right-of-way, so it's assumed that they've done maintenance of that portion. The city is also already responsible for maintenance of the pedestrian bridge at Pioneer Park. And so what we really need is a maintenance agreement for the section of path along the river, and the policy board needs to decide which is the most appropriate entity to take on that maintenance and advance that either to the Borough Assembly or the City Council, et cetera, for consideration of taking on that maintenance responsibility. And then on the funding side, this is a relatively large price tag. I do have access to enough federal funds in different categories to fully fund the construction of the project. But the one thing that we need to sort out is who's going to pay the 9% match on the construction phase of this project. So $7 million project is going to be roughly $700,000 in match. I can get creative on the federal funding side to use congestion mitigation air quality dollars, which by policy, the state would cover the match on that. I may not have 7 million total available, so it might be 5 million of that fund category that the state pays match on. But there might be another balance of funding, different federal funding category that either the city or the borough or some other entity may have to pay the match. So we need to get to the bottom of that question as well. Okay, fast forwarding here, page 21. At the February meeting of the policy board, they referred this project to the Walk, Ride, Roll Committee for recommendations. Page 22, we did hold a special meeting of that committee on March 13th. And then pages 23 through 25 shows you the bullets of recommendations that came out of that committee meeting. I'll highlight a few of these for you. I won't highlight all of them. But the Walk, Ride, and Roll Committee made pretty quick work of this project. It's a very heavily supported project by the community, as well as this committee. So they wanted to point out to the policy board that there has been support by the general public, as well as the Borough Assembly and Fairbanks City Council for we're going on 39 years now of documented resolutions to advance this project. They also wanted to highlight for the board that this is an opportunity to buy back a half mile of riverfront for community use that's currently owned by the railroad. And for project alternatives, this committee did not want the policy board to move forward with some of the alternatives to extend the path up to Chino Landing's Loop Road and do an alternate route The purpose and need for the project is a river walk. So if it's not on the river front, then it's not a river walk. They wanted to remind the policy board that phases 1 and 2 of the Riverwalk were constructed in 2003 and 2009 on the south side. So this is phase 3, the very next stage of the project, and we want to continue full build out to the Riverwalk if at all possible. There is also another phase 4 on the north side of the river between pretty much the Borough Building and the Carlson Center, with a few new pedestrian bridges across the river down there. That's a much larger project that has a lot more headaches, but this phase of the project is relatively straightforward, especially since the right-of-way acquisition process, the negotiations have been very fruitful with railroad this go around. They also thought it was an excellent alternative for folks that would have to traverse the undercrossing at the Pembroke Bridge. So if you can imagine, you're on the west side of town, so University Avenue side of town, and you're coming to downtown, you hit Tiger Road, you'd come down along this path and then cross on the existing pedestrian bridge. So you would avoid having to go on that undercrossing, which in the summertime is commonly flooded. You can see next page. As far as the cost saving measure, they requested the policy board consider putting out or having DOT put out a vendor request for quote or request for proposals for prefabricated sections of the Riverwalk. They did support the Helical Pile Foundation, and the thought is that perhaps this could be prefabricated out of state. Barge start put on the railroad, delivered to Fairbanks, and once the foundation is in place, it's kind of plug and play and just start putting them on their 20-foot sections or however that prefabrication process will work. For maintenance responsibility, they recommended that provided that DOT and the city already have some maintenance responsibility in parts of the project, that the borough take on the Riverwalk portion. We did have a Parks and Rec employee at this meeting. I think the Parks and Rec department is a bit resistant to taking on this maintenance responsibility, specifically because of the boardwalk structure. So that's a concern. But they also pointed out in the very next bullet that if the borough does take on that maintenance responsibility of the Riverwalk portion, they should be part of the Parks and Rec department in particular should be part of the design team, so that they are involved in some of those decisions as to what is going to be constructed, because they would be the entity they would have to inherit it and maintain it. All right, just a couple more. Next page. The consistency with local plans. They also wanted to point out that the project has been in the Chino Riverfront plan for decades. It's also for last couple decades as well, has been in our long range transportation plan and our first non-motorized transportation plan we adopted in 2012. And it's still in there in the 2021 update for our non-motorized plan. It also directly supports the vision of the Pioneer Park Master Plan to expand the relationship with the Cheetah River. And it's also consistent with the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which cites routes and strolling and highly participating activities in and around Pioneer Park there. So bottom line on this page was the committee said, do it, move forward. Don't change the alignment of the project. And again, they have a lot of very specific recommendations as to how the project could proceed. And then behind that, beginning on page 26 and 27, was a copy of all of those local government resolutions and support from 1987 to present. There may have been some I've missed, but those are all the ones that I had easily accessible on file project. Okay, again, this is not an action item today. At the policy board meeting on April 15th, public comment period will remain open. Hopefully some new folks will show up to provide some testimony regarding the project. So this is more of an informational update for you all to follow along. But happy to entertain any questions, any discussion you want to take this item this time. Anyone in the room or online? One second, talking about the Chamber Walk, I guess. 39 years of talking about it's enough. You're just going. Okay. Yeah, Kelly?
Oh, I'll make a comments of slash question. I'm not sick of talking about it. I've been talking about it for 16 years. The Cedar Riverfront Commission's been really involved in this project as well.
Yep.
And I was a little surprised at the last technical committee meeting where the option was floated of not having Riverwalk on the river, but rather having it on Chelandian Loop Road. I didn't know that was really an option being considered. Would it be helpful to also bring that concept back to the Cedar Riverfront Commission and see if they support consideration of that option, or this project was originally scoped just along the river?
Yes, John.
I believe we've seen it at Cedar Riverfront.
They didn't take action on it.
Oh, okay, they're aware of it.
Yeah, but we're looking for kind of action and direction from maybe some of the commissions responsible for that vision, that development.
Gotcha.
Prior to a decision being made, I think that'd be a useful step.
Sure. If you want to calendar it up, I'm happy to attend future Riverfront Commission meeting.
I just maybe follow up, if the next policy board, is the board expecting to make a decision on the scope being on the river or on Chelandian Loop Road?
It isn't, at the next board meeting, it's an open action item for anything they want to make a motion on related to this project.
Okay.
So it could be that, they could make a motion related to maintenance, they could make a motion related to the current design. They have a suite of options to them as to what subjects that they want to make motions on. So I think all of the decision points that I presented, well, I don't think we're gonna get motions on all of those. But even if the board makes a motion to, hey, let's advance a maintenance agreement to the Borough Assembly for consideration, that could be a positive step. If the Assembly says no, then we really do need to look at alternatives or go to the City Council to see if they'd be willing to take on the maintenance direction. We need to get to an end decision on some of these things, so we need their direction. No, we're not expecting them to make motions on all of these different topics. It's whichever ones they would like to pick and choose.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll dive into Airport Way. Ugliest road in Fairbanks. Determined by our public input during our first round, the public engagement for our long range transportation plan. So what I've done here in the packet is I've cherry picked out some of the recommendations from the Airport Way reconnaissance study that was done back in 2006 and finalized in 2007, as well as the more recent effort in 2017 to 2018 for a functional features analysis, a design toolkit and site-specific recommendations for Airport Way. So right now in our long-range transportation plan, we just have this project that says Airport Way corridor improvements. Any improvements listed in any of these plans. But my hope is that we can cherry pick 1, 2, or 3 of these specific projects out of these plans to put in as a standalone project in our long-range transportation plans in hopes that we actually fund something in this next funding plan cycle on Airport Way. So a lot of great ideas have come up over the years. Things that have been built since this original study was made was the GARS intersection. That was a big one to focus on. The improvements at the University Avenue intersection. And then, of course, the airport Cushman intersection is in design currently, heading to construction soon. Even on Cowell Street, there's a lot of recommendations for removal of frontage roads or removal of the connection to the side streets. And so Cowell Street did remove those connections out there. So there's a few things that have happened at different intersections. But in large part, some of the bigger ideas, and even some of the smaller ideas, as far as like beautification, like can we do something different with the chain link fence? Do something different with the Jersey barriers? None of those have come to fruition. So, anyways, I'm going to share with you all some of the recommendations from these plans. But then what the hoping from the technical committee is somebody to raise their hand and say, I really like that project, and then discuss it. I'm really just trying to get a feeling today for what might be supported. Something that we might be able to accomplish. I think there are some small projects in here I think that are reasonable to do that wouldn't elicit public controversy. But could help improve the corridor. So, but without further ado, Olivia, so in the packet here for this first one, there is a section in the study called Most Promising Alternatives. These figures are terrible. They start on page 61. I have like 3 different PDFs of this study and they all have these same, I think these figures were printed and then scanned. But I was not able to get any clearer drawings than what you see in the packet there. And so pages, 61, 62, 63 are kind of 3 different alternatives from this study. But a lot of what you see here on these figures is intersection improvements and then removal of frontage roads and then the addition or improvement to backage roads, what they're called. So rather than accessing the business along the frontage road, you would access the business along down a block or 2 and then drive behind the business to access it because there is no access directly off Airport Way to the businesses that line Airport Way. We have to go to the frontage roads. So a lot of different recommendations here. Some of these will require the demolition of buildings and a lot of right-of-way acquisition. Most everything that you see out of the study are very expensive projects. But these are all pretty well vetted improvements for the corridor. But again, not much of these have been built except for the improvements to University Avenue and the Gars intersection really to date. Okay, and actually, Olivia, if you go to the functional features analysis, which was done 10 years later, page 67 in the packet, this is actually a better figure to show the outcome of that 2007 reconnaissance study. This is a figure that shows it kind of a little bit more easily digestible. So it shows you the specific frontage roads which were proposed by the study to be removed. But there's also some interesting things here to consider. One is a new signalized intersection of Moore Street, which is the entrance to Pioneer Park. Currently, that's a right-in, right-out only. So if you're traveling eastbound, you can't take a left-hand turn into Pioneer Park. You have to go down to the Wilbur Street intersection at that stoplight. Take your left-hand turn there and then backtrack over to Pioneer Park. And then another one I thought was interesting was on Barnett Street. It says convert Barnett Street to a 2-way street from Airport Way down to 10th Avenue. Currently, it is just a 2-way street to Gaffney Road. But if you made it 2-way down to 10th, it might improve access to downtown or even access to Barnett Magnet School and the clinic that's on the corner there. So that's a low cost, high impact project in my opinion. So, and I don't know, since 2007 that this has ever been discussed since. I was kind of surprised when I saw it. I didn't remember that recommendation, but that could be a simple project if it's supported. Okay, and then last is the design toolkit and site specific recommendation. Cover for that report is on page 68. Olivia, if you're going to page 72, All right, 73. So this was a two-part report. One was a design toolkit for beautification features on Airport Way, and then there was a second chapter in here for site-specific recommendations, kind of looking section by section of Airport Way, what specific improvements would be good for Airport Way. So this one here for landscape features for this design toolkit, I'll just share with you a couple of them. If you go to the next page, it looked at a more aesthetically pleasing Jersey barrier on Airport Way. The Jersey barrier still stay. And then the next page shows you, potentially replacing the chain link fencing with more decorative fences, which would be an expensive project. And maybe, you wouldn't necessarily go forward with this design, but any improvement or alternative to chain link, I think the public would appreciate. And then behind that is the site-specific recommendations. There's description of 7 different site-specific recommendations, but page 80 in the packet kind of has an overview of those. And again, similar to the original study, it does, a lot of these recommendations relate to not really removing frontage roads, but converting frontage roads into bike and pedestrian corridors with an improved widened pathway and more landscaping features to those areas, but to prohibit vehicle traffic on some of those frontage roads. Another interesting one here is looking at Moore Street as opposed to a signalized intersection at Moore Street. There would just be an opening on the median. So you could do right in, right out at Moore Street, but then you could make a left-hand turning movement into Moore Street. You just couldn't make a left-hand turning movement out of Moore Street. So you could do the northbound movement, but you couldn't do the southbound left turn. So that's another alternative to a signalized intersection there to improve access to Pioneer Park. And I think that this actually, there was also a discussion of a right in, right out at Pioneer Park's main parking lot there along Airport Way. Again, that would be right in, right out, but it'd be a new driveway that had direct access to the parking lot as opposed to going down to Moore Street and then taking a left into the parking lot. And there's figures associated with all these behind this. But I guess I'll stop there and see if any of these ideas in your mind elevates the need to pull them out of these plans and list them specifically in our long range plan. So that they can be considered for advancing to design and construction in our next TIP document. And we are going to be having the same conversation with Policy Board, as well as the Walk, Ride, and Roll Advisory Committee and the Project Enhancement Committee. So if you guys are first up to take a look at this and think about it. Yes, Tim?
That Barnett at 10, obviously we're looking at Barnett right now, so I wouldn't be against it. I remember Cushman used to be open from Gaffney to Temper for the 10 two-way, and we changed that with that Cushman streets. And there's pros and cons, like you say, but I could see, I never liked how that abruptness in the Barnett is like at Gaffney. Yeah, so I think that's a good idea. So I don't know if that can be incorporated into what we're doing now with Barnett. I mean, it should. And that way we can do that typical.
Or at least consider.
Or consider, yeah,
Consider.
exactly. And so, but yeah, I'd like to see that get considered.
That's the type of input I'm looking for. Yes, John?
What initially like got us zoned in on looking at all of Airport Way, I guess, for some kind of improvements? Did we fall into like some kind of money or something, or?
So right now, again, it was voted the ugliest road in Fairbanks. As far as our public input process. And
Okay.
our last steering committee meeting for our long range transportation plan update, we were talking about the needs assessment. And 2-hour meeting, and we spent an hour talking about Airport Way. So with the steering committee, it was a hot topic. The public has a lot of opinions about it,
Okay,
and we haven't done a lot as far as beautification or changing the function of the roadway. in the past 20 years. So, we just want to elevate it to try to cherry pick out some of these projects and actually do something on Airport Way as opposed to waiting another decade.
What was the criteria? Was it like the most votes or something, or most comments?
Yep.
Okay, and then there were other roads, but we're focused in on this one particularly.
Yeah, I think South Cushman and Tiger
Okay,
were also top contenders. We'll talk about Tiger a little bit later on the agenda.
and did we get comments regarding like the functionality of the road or, I mean, the ugliest thing was a good way to get people involved, right? But
Yep.
should we not have been asking something like, how functional are some of these roads around here as the planning, committee?
It was an open-ended question and people
Gotcha.
had different reasons.
Okay,
So,
Which, I mean, just from an outreach perspective, I think that really just highlights how people are perceiving the function of the roadway because they just offered up the information. It wasn't even a prompt.
yeah, I get it. It's a pretty creative way to do it. But, okay.
okay, Tim, and then we'll get to Jenny.
So the Jersey barriers, I see the need for them, but I also understand that they're unsightly. So I don't know if obviously I'm new there, so I don't know if we can dedicate more resources to find a viable alternative. That'd be huge, because we have other areas that we need that type of protection. And if we can come up with a viable alternative that protects, but also beautifies, how can that be moved forward on? Asking the question. I'd like to see action on that,
Yeah, I mean, it could be a project that, yeah. Makes pretty Jersey barriers.
well, I mean,
Come on, we
maybe
better
a
do
structural, well, like a structural engineer or something. I mean, the crash, if you ever read the news, I see reports all the time where a person will like take their car and go into a crowd for some reason. Why, I don't know, it's just the way society is sometimes. So when we put stuff on the street where people are unprotected, I don't agree with that. People need to be protected, but I also get in enhancing things and making things look better, so if there's a way to fund a project to like a structural company where they can come up with a rated crash worthy barrier, but that is aesthetically pleasing, we should try to move forward on that.
I guess just, can I, more general comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's this one's a DOT maintained facility as well, so we're gonna have to work closely with us, DOT, on any improvements that might happen, because I believe we're gonna have final say on that.
Yep.
Versus fast in this instance.
Yep.
Yeah,
No, absolutely.
okay.
Okay.
I have a couple comments. I'll start with my Jersey barrier comment. And John, maybe it seems like putting money into this type of Jersey barrier, it would still get trashed with maintenance, right? And snow clearing.
It's possible, but if maybe they are an old version of the Jersey or F-shaped barrier, so it may end up being an improvement that
Okay,
could be beneficial. It's something to look into.
that would be my.
But yeah, they will degrade over time.
Yeah. And then along with that too, it seems like the snow clearing between Airport Road and the frontage roads. It's like, and I've never talked to a snow clearer, but, you always get this 20-foot high pile of snow there. And would there be a better barrier that also could clear easier, more efficiently? So I don't know, but that's going down into the design thing. I guess I'm not a big fan of just changing out one type of Jersey barrier for another without actually, I really like changing out the chain link fence though. In all the years I've driven down Airport Road and ridden my bike and walked on the sidewalk there with the chain link fence, it always feels like I'm in jail.
Yep. We got
Yeah.
comments like that. Yep.
Yeah, so I think of these value for the money. I like that aesthetic improvement a lot. And then I just had a question when you were talking about the Moore Street
Yep.
Right in, right out. Would that be directly off of Airport Road? Is that the proposal without a signal?
Yes. One study recommended a new signal there.
Yeah.
This newer study, 10 years later, they recommended that it's just an opening and a median, so you can make a left-hand turn. There might be a left-hand turn between there, but it's, the accompanies it.
I would hope so.
So you can just, you cross the 2 lanes and get into Moore Street, but, yeah, you'd be prohibited left-hand turns coming out of Moore Street on the airport way.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to see that study. I'm not a huge fan of getting rid of all furniture, and so I think going back to John's question about public input, was that functionality really that they were, was public complaining about frontage roads or?
Yes,
Was, oh, thanks.
yep, I mean, I did the
can't-
search for you guys, yeah, it is kind of hard to see, but I mean, frontage roads came up a lot in just the comments from the survey, and that was. We had 158 people who responded to this, so not like a huge sample size, but they came up a lot. And then people really struggle with just access on and off of.
Like how to
Airport
do
Road.
it. Yeah.
It's also important to note that Airport Way is a stroad. It's not like why the Jersey barriers. I mean, design of the roadway obviously contributes to a lot of things. Again, I'm not an engineer. This is like a main thoroughfare for, yeah. Having the Jersey barriers essentially says like, you can travel at such fast, you know, we have them on Johansson.
Yeah.
So I think that that's worth discussing as well as a technical committee. I would be interested to hear comments on that.
Yeah, one thing that we were discussing at the staff level was that Airport Way is a controlled access facility.
Yep.
What if we redesignate it to not be a controlled access facility? Then the fencing problem goes away, because you just remove it.
Can we do some slowing down, like traffic calming things?
Well, I think it would have to accompany,
Yeah, right.
So that's getting into maybe a study, right? Some kind
Oh,
of,
it would be, yeah.
For sure.
yeah.
Well, maybe-
So if these ideas are something we wanna look into, I think it's probably like a health study or, you know, something way more involved than us looking at some studies from like 2000 and whatever you said, 2 or 2007, yeah.
Well, in our long range plan, we have projects, but we also have studies.
Yeah,
So maybe the recommendation is to have a new study on this.
to jump into a study instead of like a little project or something, maybe, I don't know, just throwing that idea out there.
You could also argue that our Airport Way has been studied to death, but just do something.
That's true too, but a lot of changes have been made around Airport Way too, you know, along like university is all changed, and then the end of Airport Way is a new intersection, so there's a lot of different inputs that are changed since those studies.
Yeah, go ahead, Kellen.
I don't know where to start here. So I'll talk about a couple of things, but I've been involved in Airport Way for a long time. So I started working for Fast Plan in 2010. And DOT just finished the Airport Way reconnaissance study. And they put forward 3 options. I have the whole study on my desk. It's like 500 pages long. It's this giant study. But they studied everything we're talking about. They studied everything from option 1, which was basically full control access highway through the middle of town, to option 3, which was removing the controlled access features. And I think the whole thing cost $500,000 to do. And then where I got a little frustrated is rather than doing anything about it in 2011, DOT just repaved Airport Way without doing any changes, just repaved it. So that's where we kicked off the functional features analysis study to try to get some improvements on Airport Way. And I was pretty involved in that. Don with my office was much more involved in that, but DOT was project manager of that. They were along the whole way. So arguably everything in there has been very well vetted through DOT. And then the 2018 study, like how many studies are we gonna do on Airport Way? Like I'm kind of sick of studying. And to take that a step further, the borough just finished the downtown plan, adopted it 2 years ago. And we had a tremendous amount of public involvement. Thousands of people participated in that. I was just looking at the comments. I had thousands of comments in front of me. And so many of them are about Airport Way, and we have so many about the chain link fences.
Mhm.
And actually, it was the planning commission that felt so strongly about the chain link fences, they wrote into the downtown plan, no DOT projects in this area will use chain link fences. So that's right in the downtown plan, and that comes back to state statute. They have the ability to do that. That's how strongly they felt about that. So we're looking for projects like, we actually just had someone testify at the assembly last week about getting rid of the chain link fences on Airport Way. It's this common thing that keeps coming up. So I'm sure we could study it more times if we want to, or we could just do something. So that's my comment. In kind of the big picture, I think the whole community supports removing the chain link fences. I don't see anyone standing up saying, put barbed wire on top of them or something. But I'm intrigued with a lot of the bigger picture ideas as well, particularly from that functional features analysis. The Pioneer Park entrance, I think there's a lot of improvements that could be made to the corridor. Can't do them all at once, you have to pick and choose, but I think there could be a lot of benefit from that Pioneer Park entrance that we talked a little bit about.
So I guess wouldn't upheld planning environmental linkage. It's kind of a study, kind of the first step towards getting something done. Would that not be an action that you might support?
I can respond. I've had pretty negative experiences from Pell studies.
Okay.
You look at the Pell studies we've done in this community, we've spent $500,000 on the STIS. And the whole thing was expand capacity, expand capacity, expand capacity. Take out the whole shopping center at College Road to expand capacity and put an interchange there. So I don't have a lot of positive experiences from a Pell study when we have 3 studies right now that arguably looked at all of those things, with the exception of taking the first step into an environmental document.
Gotcha.
Corey, you want to add anything?
Can I-
Just open
yeah.
discussion.
Maybe just add a little bit of context based on what Olivia was saying. I think something's changed in the discussion in the planning world since 2007 is organizations like Strong Towns that focus heavily on how road corridors either support or harm adjacent commercial business areas. STROADS is like a term that they coined. And then at a larger scale, there in the past have been grants called Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods, which are federal grants that look at in the past, it looks a lot at freeways and controlled access road typologies where it actually split neighborhoods apart. A lot of it and clearing practices, that were really harmful. But, at a certain scale, when you look at our community, Airport Way bisects probably the most diverse, spread of different business and land uses that the community has, with a military base on one side, near to a university on the other side, homes, small and large businesses, medical education, entertainment, services, and a bunch of vacant lots that have the potential to become something else. So, I would, adding to this conversation, think high level. Some of this feels like Band-Aids, like make, Aurora, New Jersey barriers, but what's our potential loss to community economic development by continuing to allow this to be essentially a freeway, a redundant freeway, when we already have so many large east-west roads. This could really be a source of like a second round of, I think, growth and development in the community with all these empty lots, and not to mention the amount of land that's just going to these frontage roads, which are redundant, kind of a maintenance burden that, economically challenging. So it's a bit of a rant, but just looking at it from a land use standpoint and our involvement here at FAST with Strong Towns and those types of organizations is that the connection to land use and economic development too can be improved with making some maybe more bold choices with corridors like this.
I'm gonna show my ignorance here, both on what we can do and what you guys do. Would it be possible, because I really like what you guys are saying, but I don't know what that looks like. Would it be possible for us to sit, or me, with you and just, yes, not these ones that I can't even tell where the streets are. and sketch out like, okay, here's what we have, here's this kind of option, you know, and like super high levels so that we can be
Yeah,
talking from sort of a sense of, oh, I can visualize
yeah, that's
what that,
the game plan. We were just discussing this because like Corey has the capacity to provide not only 3D visualizations, but we can do like a visual fly through. And my dream, since I wrote my thesis, got the stamp on it 8 years ago, is to provide high level visualizations and experiences in the decision theater at the university. So ideally, it would be great if we had the time and capacity to do these visualizations high level and then publicly notice a meeting of the technical committee in the decision theater at the university. And then you guys could literally just sit there and experience
right?
what an alternative version of this corridor could look like. I think that that would be pretty incredible.
I would love that.
And having the request from the technical.
Okay,
great.
because what we're doing is we're being very progressive in how we want to change our town, right? And it goes along with a new comprehensive plan and all these other things.
That's the hope.
One would hope, you know, and the small grant program and everything. But I'm having trouble visualizing sort of how that whole thing would come together. And I agree, piecemealing, like changing a fence or a Jersey barrier, it's like, let's get up a little higher. So I would love that. I don't know what we do to make that a thing.
I think you just requested it, so we'll do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Maybe like
I think that'd be great.
second highest in the queue.
Yeah.
I'll work on getting the decision theater book. We can come up with a date and then,
Okay.
because yeah, I anticipate momentum for changes to Airport Way is gonna kind of spiral after the policy board. So,
We could also collect like some example cities that have already gone through this sort of thing.
Yes.
So, you know, there's no trail breaking being done here, you know, this kind of right sizing roads for what a city or a community's aspirations are for land use, that's not new territory. I mean, the fact that there are grant programs out there already sort of shows that there's an ultra path for need. So somewhere between ideas of what ours might look like in conjunction with here are other precedent cities and programs might create a more complete picture.
I'd also like to know, I mean, just from a 30-40 years ago perspective about dividing communities in half. And I know, Kellen, we've talked about this in terms of the Johansson coming down into, I think it was like the Main Street neighborhood and, yeah, just continually disenfranchising already disenfranchised communities. I think that this could be a really amazing option for us to undo harm in the community. And we do have a couple of books, but I would highly recommend checking out Dividing Lines if anyone wants to know what the heck I'm talking about. But we have it in our library and it's a super solid read. But I think Airport Way also just really, when you're looking at a map, especially when you're looking at our Title VI maps, you can really see how it's sort of this dividing line in our community in terms of service, access to resources, et cetera. So it'd be really fun to just take that super umbrella, like overarching holistic look at the corridor, see how it's serving and not serving our entire community. And then, yeah, like what Corey said, I mean, there's no reinventing the wheel here. This is a priority for many communities because they exist everywhere.
Yeah, because then I think we could start doing small projects that start getting us there a lot quicker and more consciously.
Yeah, I don't want to sound radical, but even like removing a stoplight or changing the orientation of the stoplights might help limit that, like people racing. I mean, I was in a collision on Airport and Washington, and the result of it was because this fella had gotten through the Airport and University intersection and then was racing that next light. He was trying to beat it, like bored into me 50 something miles per hour. It was terrible. And that sort of opened my eyes to just like, oh, we're really encouraging a lot of this behavior with the way that it's oriented. So it'll be fun to.
I mean, it's pretty well documented that having the countdown on the stop and go sign
Oh, yeah.
encourages people to speed.
Oh, yeah.
And go through yellow lights.
Oh, yeah. It's helpful until it's not.
Exactly. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, Colin?
The one thing I'll add is Airport Way's changed its function over our history. You look at when Airport Way was the old runway. And then it established into really the only way to get from East Fairbanks to West Fairbanks. It was serving that mobility aspect. And it served it well, and when many of the improvements that went into Airport Way, it was really the only, other than College Road, was really the only east-west corridor in town. So in the nineties, we built Johansson Expressway. Prior to that, we built the Mitchell Expressway. So now we have these other parallel high-speed, high-volume expressways in town. And what I'll pull it out for next meeting. If you look at the 2007 reconnaissance study, it says we can't go full no access because the traffic volumes are going to increase. And I forget the numbers. It's like 30,000 vehicles a day. The traffic volumes actually decreased since that study was done. So I'm just looking at the numbers right now. Currently, we've decreased significantly even just over the last 10 years. And I don't have the numbers in front of me with full corridor. I bet very few people are going the full length of the corridor right now. So it's not really serving that mobility aspect, but more of an accessibility road. So I think a lot of changes could be made because it's really not the primary east-west corridor in Fairbanks anymore. And it was designed to be, it's just not serving that function anymore.
And we already changed the culture with narrow roads, narrower lanes, I mean, sorry.
You're fine. Okay. Oh, we have to
And with that same idea, right? The College Road is no longer an east-west thoroughfare. Just picture. What? Oh, no, sorry.
Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I just thinking like. There's been other past studies and there's not easy answers. I guess that's why they don't get built. So then we kind of keep having to go back and then things change over time. I think, it'd be good to like reassess, like reimagine how it could be used, but then you have to look at like how other roads, like Helen was mentioning, there's other options. But then how is the traffic utilizing other roads? Because when we did the PAL, we had to look at, Kellen also mentioned access versus mobility. So then, which one? Because we do have a lot of mobility concerns, we have like trucks going through town, like how are they gonna use it? Because everybody adapts to, when you change something, everybody adapts. So it's not always, you can't always plan how people are gonna adapt, but thinking through some of those things and reimagining how traffic might flow. As far as a state's perspective, I think having mobility, people moving, doing commerce, access is important too, but moving, if we change Airport Way in a significant way, it could shift traffic into other places and then when we create unintended consequences. So that's where maybe a little bit more looking at things with updated numbers, because it's you don't want to keep restudying things and not do something, but at the same time, what's changed that we need to take into consideration if we start. Because I think in order to make Airport Way all it can be, if the community wants to change it, you kind of have to break it. You have to break the way it's being used or change it in order to make it, and it can make it better, but it'd be different. So people have to come along and buy into that. When you go into other communities and see how, if you go into Anchorage, Old Seward Highway is kind of like, that's just always been a commerce industrial corridor. It's kind of hard. That's probably an ugly road down there, but it's functional. It's not great, but it has a function. So in order to change that a lot, you're going to change the function and move lots of things around. So it can make it better. When I come down here, I prefer to drive on Second instead of Airport Way, just because I'd rather just go slower and quieter and see the river and stuff. But not, not everybody, you have to bring people along and kind of, I think, reimagining, seeing the visual of how things would look. And with, then there's a lot of room there, but, in the DOT right away. And I don't think, I talked to Corey too about frontage roads and backage roads and stuff like that. There'd be a lot of wholesale changes that would have to happen to businesses, but what are some other options to change it within what we have there already? It might be slowing down speed of traffic. I know we've talked about rejiggering all the lights so you can make it through, if you're gonna do the whole corridor, you know, like from a compost to Fort Wainwright or something. But, at the same time, that's just kind of like, you're encouraging a different behavior, and it can't work out all the time going like that, so there's just a lot of things to figure out, but it would be good to like take off our preconceived or what we've done in the past and just keep doing the same. Look at it, because it can probably be better. And one of the concerns for DOT, besides the, being able to move commerce, however it goes. And we, that was an issue with the Warhol, like how are the trucks gonna get through town? Are they gonna go up to Steve's? We thought they'd come up Hager and go to Johansson, but then they make adjustments and they go up to Steve's. So then that becomes a corridor for commerce there too, shifts traffic around. But, in Anchorage, they have a real issue with safety with pedestrians when you have wide traffic that's fairly high speed, but then you have long gaps between crossings, they have a lot of pedestrian fatalities. We don't want to, we've been, fortunate we don't have that same issue, but going forward, we want to make sure we keep up the safety so we don't get in the same boat that they're in. So, yeah, just lots to consider. It can be hard to change it. And I know probably for the DOT, it's kind of like, it functions. It's not great, but it functions. Not to everybody's liking, but people move around and it's fairly safe and you're used to it, but that doesn't mean that the way it should always be. So it'd be good to look at it again and bring in some of those past studies, but then not redo them all, but see what we can take from there, and then what we have to do with other traffic analysis. And there's graphics and GIS and visualization can help move things along too. So we don't have those like pretty graphics like you just put up on the screen. That doesn't help.
Send them my way. I got.
That's why
Thank you, Brad.
Oh, and then, thinking of it as a core, not thinking of it as a corridor like one wall, Drake strip, but a corridor is like, if we don't wanna, and federal highways is really big into this, you don't wanna do something here that's gonna hamper what you can do there later. So just thinking about how it might happen and work together, so we're not doing something at Moore Street. So, oh man, we shouldn't have done that, because now it's gonna mess up all this other stuff.
Go ahead, Don.
I remember a couple of years ago, we did an analysis of accidents in town. And, Airport Way has the highest accident rate of any facility in town. And then what I'm hearing here, what it sounds like really, because it sounds like DOT is making decisions about the road without really having full information about the road. Like Brett said, it's kind of doing little things here and there, and it's okay, but it probably could be better. And then Kelly brought up a really good point about how traffic has changed the use of them. I think what we really need is an origin destination study for this corridor. Because if we had that, then we would understand, kind of what the linkages are within the corridor, what the high traffic portions of the corridor are, what areas have the most turn movements, things like that, so we can understand, are people going through the corridor? Are they only on it for a quarter mile? I think something like that would really give us a lot of answers for, what the possibilities are. And I think it's something DOT can understand.
And tack on to what Don said, I think I was trying to say, knowing how traffic is on adjacent and how it is around, not just Airport Way, but if you do something, maybe you can do something on an adjacent or parallel road that's gonna help Airport Way, but the project isn't even Airport Way, but it's something that's over, just trying to think of something that might be like, Lathrop and Davis or something else on Pegger, because people get into patterns where this is kind of like a dumb traffic thing, so now I'm just gonna use Airport Way to get where I'm going. Whereas if you fix this other one, you might just keep traffic in its spot and not be pushing stuff over the airport. So it's kind of a comprehensive traffic command model type thing. All the people using it, what are some other fixes that you can do to
Yeah,
kind of help Airport Way?
I think if we looked at the new model that we get, or there's a lot of rush study, looking at how traffic moves within the area, and then detailed look at the corridor itself, they'd have a real good feel for what some of those, changes do. And so I think it's a study. I mean, I really do. I think it's a good study, but I think we really need more answers before we jump into major modifications.
And maybe part of that would be talking to, not just the public, but targeted interviews to like businesses that do driving as a business. It could be truck drivers too. But I remember I had a friend that was a UPS driver in Minneapolis, and if I wanted to get across town, I would ride with him because he knew how to get through the town. He knows all the ins and outs, and it could be the same thing, it could be taxi drivers, Uber drivers, and UPS, FedEx, and Amazon, and pizza delivery. Some of those know how traffic is, and I kind of picked up some stuff. So if I'm gonna drive across town, I kind of like have an idea of how I'm gonna zig through, and it wouldn't make sense to other people, but.
Yep. That's a good point. Be an interesting steering committee. Something like that. All right, last call for any comments on Airport Way. I think it was a pretty good discussion here today. And I've got my bullets on things that are of interest.
Just a question. A lot of kind of ideas thrown around. Is there any other homework we want either as peer agencies or fast planning and be able to make a more educated decision in the future meeting? I don't know if that's a question to.
Well, I guess to everybody, I mean, as far as next steps, we're gonna have the same conversation with the policy board, same conversation with the walk, ride, and roll committee and the project enhancement committee. So, and I'm gonna see, I've got my bullets here from you all. I'm gonna see what overlaps from other committee discussion. But again, the hope is that I pull out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 specific things for Airport Way to throw in a long range plan. And then you all get to argue about it again before we release that for public comment. You guys are gonna vet the project list before it goes out, and it's gonna have not just Airport Way corridor improvements projects, and have specific things. So, so there's gonna be many bites at the apple here, more opportunities at future meetings to weigh in on what you think we should utilize some funding for or not.
What do you think you'll take into the policy board? Their next.
April 15th, we're gonna have the same discussion on policy board. May have very different opinions than all you all from. Go ahead, Ted.
Just at a point that I want to narrow in on. You said specific things on Airport Way, not like a general thing, but what I've noticed, if you come at something with everything, nothing happens. But if you pick one or two specific things and zero in on it, so I like that approach. Like maybe just the chain link fencing or just this.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the approach.
That's the idea.
I like that.
Short
Okay.
list, yeah. Yes, John.
I guess, back to my original thing I commented on, I guess, is it was voted the ugliest road, but maybe we shouldn't continue to keep calling it that now. I mean, we utilized the survey, which was clever, but, I think it just is too bad of a connotation for using at a planning setting for public.
Correct, John.
Sorry, I was trying not to tell this story, but I have to tell the story.
Awesome.
I love story time with Kellen.
This predated my time as planning director, but we had a downtown plan that was adopted in 2008. And the consultant team that was working on that, they were out of Oregon, kind of renowned as downtown planning experts. Never been to Fairbanks. Flew into Fairbanks, And the principal of the firm was there and got picked up at the airport and driven downtown to his hotel. It's the planning director driving him downtown. And he looked at the planning director and said, "This is the ugliest road in America. And this is how you welcome your visitors to Fairbanks with chain link fence and Jersey barriers." So the term, I think, maybe originated ugliest road in America. I'm happy to use that term if you think it's. If you see.
It's the opposite direction.
I'd say it's kind of a common thing amongst the community that Airport Way is not very visually pleasing, and not many Fairbanksans are proud of Airport Way as kind of one of their home roads.
So-
Hey, Rando.
Oh, that's fine.
Road.
I was just thinking, if we're not doing beautification projects specifically, maybe, you know, I don't want this to end up on like actual documents in the future.
Be on that.
It's gonna be in the MTP, that's for sure. It's gonna have its own page, so.
All right, well, let's move on. Got a few other fun topics. Okay. Past improvement program. For 2027 is on page 88 of the packet. So. John Natardis over here, he has $200,000 for design and $1 million for construction for next summer to do another bundle of projects for the past improvement program. What you see on page 88 is what we funded for 2026 construction, but I think this is actually gonna be bid late summer or fall. And so this work will actually be built in 2027, but John needs to get to begin his design on a bundle of projects for 2027. On the very next page shows you the projects that were nominated for the 26 program that didn't make the cut. So this is the list of locations that City of Fairbanks, City of North Pole, UAF, the Borough, DOT nominated to the program last year, that again didn't make the funding cut. So they're still in the queue if they're still supported by local governments. But you also see on this page some big gaps. There's really nothing for the City of Fairbanks other than a sidewalk project. There's nothing there for UAF. The borough has three really great projects. City of North Pole has some great projects. But then again, you know, a year later, maybe the priorities have changed for the borough or changed for the City of North Pole. But what I'd like to see is, I'd like to set up a new subcommittee meeting this month to accept any new nominations to the program from each of the entities at the table here. And to relook at this list to come up with a recommendation for the next technical committee meeting on May 5th, 6th. Such that we can get to an approved list for the 27 program by May 20th, the May policy board meeting, so that John has his marching orders what to move forward with. And again, we've budgeted 200,000 for design, $1 million for construction. The 2027 actually has quite a few, like $3 to $4 million of funding that's not programmed to any project. You could double that amount, we could make it a $2 million program for next year if we all want to. So I don't want people to hold back on what their nominations are. We just need to get a new list. We need to work through it. And again, get a recommendation out of a subcommittee level to bring back to technical at our next meeting, so that we can advance something to the policy board to approve. Just a reminder about this program, the next page is just a description of it. It's our preventative maintenance program. It's really focused on, you know, resurfacing roadways, resurfacing asphalt paths, you know, sidewalk repairs, anything that's simple in nature that doesn't require utilities or right-of-way acquisition, or any really detailed design. So John likes to draw lines on maps and say, 20-foot wide, go build it.
Very simple.
Yeah, very simple stuff.
Typical section style where you don't really need a survey for,
Right.
and just give some lines and a picture.
So well, I guess my plan is to try to hold a subcommittee meeting in probably 2 weeks. So mid-April, maybe the same week of the policy board meeting, but the subcommittee will just come up with a recommendation and then it'll come back to full technical committee at your May meeting and then to the policy board. And typically for these subcommittee meetings, I invite, the maintenance folks, so city public works, DOT, M&O, et cetera. Because they also have opinions on what roads are causing the biggest headaches. They'd like to see some fresh paving on or other improvements. So, anyways, I've got a running list. I typically invite the whole technical committee. You're not all have to be there, but if you're interested in being there, you can participate, and I'll get the maintenance folks on there as well. So that's my plan. Any discussion or questions? Yes, Cal?
Would you just mind inviting the borough Parks and Rec rep and road service rep?
Yes, yeah. Will do.
That would be what, John Haas and
By John Haas and Mike Red.
Michael Bradley, yeah. They would be good ones, or send
Yep.
Cam or Tricia, and
All right, any other questions?
I guess on this one, so there will be a sub-technical meeting, and then
Committee,
it's at between now and next month, and then.
yeah, middle of this month,
Okay, good.
and then we hope to, out of that meeting, we should have a recommendation,
Okay,
and then that goes back to this full technical committee in May.
all right.
And approval by the policy board at May 20th, so.
I will bring to that, kind of my general timeline for these projects, because we're still trying to push out this, like, the one for 2026 right now.
Yep.
Which had a very late addition to it, which will then turn this project into a project where only one area gets built this summer, really, and everything got pushed to 27. But I want to bring a general timeline and kind of like teach y'all how long things take to deliver through my processes, especially the environmental
Yeah,
timelines.
John's pretty critical to providing the input as cities, the borough, whoever nominates projects, he's like, yeah, no.
There's
We're not, it's not gonna fit the program.
that too, yeah, I do say no a lot, but we have so many different timelines. We got local planning approval, we have to get match checks, we have to get the environmental process done. There's all these like steps just to get a road repaved, and this meeting coming up next month is actually, I would say, it's not too late, but it's very late and it makes it tough. So each year we need to get sooner and sooner and do this process a little bit sooner. But I'll bring ideas to the subcommittee meeting for that.
Yeah, we may want to update our policy and procedure to like do these subcommittee meetings by January each year. Sounds.
Yeah, just have it set in.
Yeah,
That sounds great.
We're not doing this in April, May.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes, Tim?
And this would be for 27?
Yes. All right, next topic. The draft 2027 through 2028 Unified Planning Work Program task list is on page 91 in the packet. So next month, I'll be presenting to you all our next draft of the Unified Planning Work Program. That's a long name, but what it is our staff work plan for the next 2 years of all of the efforts we undertake as staff to complete our required plans per regulation, as well as any supplemental planning efforts or studies that we want to undertake. I did not have enough time to prepare that draft by this meeting, but I will definitely have it done by next month. But what I did was I put together a 3-page task list, so you can see the outline of what this new planning work program will look like, which begins on page 92. And specifically here today, I'll be looking for input from you all on some of these supplemental plans and or contingency plans that we may want to consider adding funding into this document for as we move forward. So this is not projects, this is planning efforts like what we were talking about for Airport Way. But just we'll focus on like the last 2 pages here for the discussion. But just real briefly here, going by task in our staff work plan, some of the highlights for the next 2 years is that first and foremost on the funding side, we have been using for operation of our office state legislative funds to cover the match for the federal money for our office. I believe our balance is down to about $70,000 in that, so it will run out next year. That'll get us through 2027, but not through 2028. We do collect annual dues payments from each local government, which we can apply towards match, but that's only about $35,000 a year. It's about half of what we need for local match. So we as staff are gonna dive into some options to cover that match. It could be increased annual dues for local governments. But also it's pretty common around the US for metropolitan planning organizations to meet their match requirement, which is in kind. Even if it's from an outside agency like the community planning department, we can claim in-kind services through a borough department to cover our match requirement. So there's different ways to do this. I don't have the answer right now on what we want to move forward with, but at the staff level, we're gonna be looking at these different options so that we can meet our match requirement. And this does require a lot of coordination with our federal partners on setting up a new system than what we currently have. For our long-range transportation plan or MTP, just showing here, we need to adopt an interim MTP by the end of this year, and then we'll adopt our final plan by the end of next year. And then for the TIP, our Transportation Improvement Program, our short-term funding plan, that will adopt a new TIP by the end of this year, utilizing a new boundary. And then Olivia is going to update our public participation plan and Title VI plan, utilizing the new boundary by the end of this year. On the next page, for air quality, we'll continue working with EPA and propose revisions to the PM 2.5 implementation rule. For the metropolitan planning area boundary, once the governor approves the boundary, we will deliver the GIS files to our federal partners. They already have them, but that is an official step of the regulations that we have to undertake after the governor approves. We also, once the boundary is approved, then we can start spending staff time in the expanded boundary areas. We want to do some focused outreach out in Farmers Loop, because our current boundary doesn't, there's a whole middle section of Farmers Loop that's missing. Our new boundary takes in almost all of Farmers Loop. And then down in the Moose Creek and Allison Air Force Base area. And then public transit system planning, we do have a new request from Max Transit to complete a paratransit operational efficiency study for their van trans services. So we want to fund that and get a request for proposals out the door to assist them with that. But this is where we get into kind of the meat of today's discussion, is task 300 and task 400. So supplemental plans and projects. Right now, things that we already have funded that are in the works is our advanced project definition. This is where we provide funding to both DOT and the city of Fairbanks to do some further investigation for projects before we actually initiate project starts. For example, Barnett Street, here recently, there was some soil testing out there to see where contaminated soils were or they were not. It can be used for identifying utilities, like for that project. If we tear up this road, are we gonna have to replace the water, sewer, et cetera? We also have a high school access and circulation study for North Pole High School, which has been funded, and I believe DOT planning has initiated the project start, but that RFP needs to get out to the door this month or next. The Geist-Chena Pump Road Corridor Study, that was funded. RFP has already been out, and DOT is negotiating with Kinney Engineering to kick that off here this summer. And the Complete Streets Prioritization Plan, we're doing that one in-house. For new plans and projects that we want to tag as high priority for funding in this next TIP, which we again plan to adopt by the end of the year, is the downtown Fairbanks traffic study, looking at converting the one-way streets to two-way streets. Freight mobility plan update, since our freight plan update was completed in 2019 before the overhaul began. It's time to do an update for that plan to look at the freight movements to the community for that effort and other ones. If Ambler Road opens up, or maybe the natural gas pipeline is a go, and there's a lot more freight movement around town. And then I have on here a pavement condition survey for non-DOT roads. Every year or every other year, DOT hires a an outside contractor to drive all the DOT roads to assess the pavement condition, and it spits out a really nice GIS map that gives different scores for different issues with the pavement. Down in Matsu recently, their MPO worked with DOT to throw an extra $200,000 in that contract to get all the city streets and the borough road service area roads. And so really this is focused on trying to get city of Fairbanks streets, city of North Pole streets, any borough road service areas that they wish to collect payment data on. Most road service areas don't have paved roads, but some do. Could even drive around campus on UAF to get UAF's roads. This is not a high cost project, but it's data that I think will lead to better decision making, especially for the fast improvement program. And then the next page, page 94, is a long list of project ideas that have come up over the years. That's kind of like, well, if we have extra funding, we can kick one of these off. But I need to know if anything on this list is the Texas really has this opinion that no, this should be a really high priority and it should be moved up to task 300 so that we propose funding for it within the next 2 years. So I won't go through all of these. You can read the list yourself there. A lot of these have been set aside as contingency plans for a number of years. It's not yet funded. But anyways, just want to open up the floor. If you have any opinions on what I've identified as high priority projects that you don't think is a high priority, should we move down to task 400 or anything from task 400, you want me to move up to task 300 so that I do propose funding for it. Once I have your comments, I can actually complete the draft of this document and bring it back for you all in May to release for public comment. So I'm trying to vet my outlook. And any change you'd like to see. Yes, Tim.
I'd like to see Lazy Street moved from 400 to 300. Do you need a reason or is that just good enough?
That's good enough. It's your street. And we're very interested in Lazy Street.
So is the public. 800 survey responses.
Any other input?
I'm just curious what the housing coordination plan is.
So that's with the current transportation bill, that was an addition. So historically, we've not been able to use our transportation planning funds to do any type of housing coordination activities. Now it's an eligible activity, and other MPOs across the US have developed housing coordination plans. It's most commonly associated with communities that are growing, so new subdivisions popping up, and making sure that the transportation infrastructure that serves those new subdivisions will meet the need of those residents and new traffic in the area. But really, Corey behind the scenes has been doing quite a bit of housing coordination work with various different parties. But it's not a plan that we are doing for ourselves, but he is participating. So did you want to add anything?
Yeah, there was a formalized process with that Fedco was hosting, Fairbanks Economic Development Corp. And then there've been a number of like community outreach things. We helped coordinate a workshop that the Downtown Association hosted in conjunction with the Incremental Development Alliance. So I've been kind of involved in a lot of different things, but all pooling resources around making housing more accessible, more affordable, trying to develop programs that achieve that. Primarily, these have been, looking at infill neighborhoods and trying to develop like existing areas like the downtown core or City of Fairbanks boundary limits.
So we're moving this to 300, give him more time before that, or is that?
No, I guess in my opinion, the activities that are underway are probably sufficient. That the CO doesn't need to create its own plan because there's other partners that are already engaged in advancing this, and Corey's free to use his staff time to participate in those activities. And we're reimbursed every hour he works in that program. Yeah, Tim?
the task 300 on E, on that downtown one-way to two-way conversion, so there's that HSIP project on the signals. I see like, you know, maybe we'll go to two-way, but then there's intersections that are slated to be done. That would have to probably be redone possibly, so. Is there a way to coordinate those two, or?
Have you spoken to Ethan?
I have, and that's why I bumped up Lacey, because right now I'm talking to him, in fact, I just sent him an email today that. We're gonna look at first, second, and third on Lacey to see if those signals are warranted, current and future, you know, have a. We're probably gonna have Kenny do that. That was my recommendation, Jeannie, I think.
Yep.
And go stop control. I mean, that's the city's goal, but I don't know, but that was step one, was to get a hold of Ethan to make sure. You know, we're making this decision and he's thinking he's building intersection, so I am coordinating with Mike Lacy home. For second and third, so, but I was just thinking of all the other stuff, there's, you know, the Barnett intersections and, maybe that's it.
Yeah, and we do
That's
intend to
10.
initiate a design start with Barnett Street
Yeah,
in 2027, so. If
we're
those
probably
are part of-
far out enough, possibly.
What's that?
Barnett's probably far out enough where it won't be a conflict. Maybe.
Yeah, it may not be, but
That's something to think about. So I'm moving on Lacey for sure, right now. First, second, and third. With.
yeah, to look at the signal works, yeah, correct, yeah. Yeah, the last thing we wanna do is spend federal money on infrastructure and then a year or two later tear it up. We can't do that.
That'd be bad.
That'd be bad.
Yeah.
Federal government. So we gotta be cautious on Lacey. We should also be cautious on Barnett if that's all part
I
of
think
this.
that's it.
Okay,
It is part of the HSI.
Yep.
So
but this two-way traffic study, would be something that would be done, you know, say through 27 into 2028, and then there would be an implementation plan, and then city still has to say, yes, we want to do this. But it could be progressive, like, okay, we'll do Sixth Avenue, Fifth Avenue, and we'll wait on fourth, third, second, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to plan it out. Yes, John?
Is this somewhere that like Airport Way will make its way onto?
Yeah, I mean, that's the input I need. If we want to do an airport way study, I would probably put it underneath task 300.
Do we have to like update this now, or when is this due? When do
This
we?
is due by September 30. So, but yeah, based on the interest in another study on airport way, we can add that to task 300. So when I put together this document, each one of these studies will have a paragraph that goes with it, so it describes what we're actually studying. But again, it gets cycled back through the technical committee to for consideration for release for public comment, public weighs in on it, and then it comes back for the technical committee of policy board's approval, probably like in July, maybe August. So there's quite a few touch points where the technical committee can change direction. For right now, I can definitely put in a placeholder for airport way. We're past 300.
Okay.
Any other input? Yeah,
Just a quick comment, you talked about match a little bit earlier. Just with personal experience, I would try to do everything we can not to use in kind, as match. I did that for years on the same federal grant at the borough. Survived a federal audit. It was a pretty cumbersome, time consuming process to use in kind as match for the grant.
Yep. Remember you saying that before, so. Yeah, in this document, it's really just going to be identified as asked to look at the options for, we're not locking into one option or another, so it'll be a continued conversation. Yes, Jen?
Do I remember correctly, if the Basics Act passes, that match will go away?
Yep.
Okay. Any update? I mean, we have no clue when they might hear that.
No, we don't. We know the current bill expires on September 30th of this year, but we also know, based on past experience, that likely they'll reauthorize or extend the bill for another year, and they'll pass this out in 2027, and there might be a competing bill from the Senate. This one's coming out of the House. I can never predict the outcome of the transportation bill.
So we can't hold our breath.
We cannot count on that.
Okay.
Sounds wonderful, though. We can't count on it. All right, any other input? Yes, John?
We talk about Chena Riverwalk like once a month. Is that something that has to be cited here or is that not?
No, that's covered
What is
underneath
this,
our,
just for new stuff?
that's covered underneath our tip task
Okay.
for all the projects that are in that list. Anytime we talk about it, goes to that task. Well, thank you for that. We got a couple changes. Okay, moving into informational items, page 95. This afternoon, you will all receive an Outlook calendar invite for a workshop next Wednesday, April 8th, noon to 2 p.m. on the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We did a workshop last year in February for all of our committees, anybody that's interested in attending. But we will have Nathan Stephen and Pam Golden from DOT on hand to talk about the Highway Safety Improvement Program, how projects are selected. They will showcase the projects that are receiving funding in the Fairbanks Norfolk area, as well as other ones that might be in the queue for our area. And then they will have a bunch of maps showing our crash data for the Fairbanks and the Norfolk area and identifying high-risk locations that they would typically in on where new highway safety improvement program projects would be nominated to. So, yeah, you all get, I know it's just a week away, but you'll get an email this afternoon from Olivia with that calendar invite. It's optional to attend. Yes, Tim?
Was lunch provided or?
Yes, we're doing lunch for this.
Okay, then that you should have led with that.
Here, yeah, yep. Yeah, last year, we we had 22 people that came, but only 9 in person. So, but if we save food,
We're only calling Bob
we
Shoes.
might get 20 of them.
Man, I'm gonna miss that one too.
Yep. We'll send you a picture of what we.
All right, thanks.
All right, next informational item is the Fairbanks Area 2026 construction program. Olivia, if you go. What is that? Page 97. The next page, yeah, that page there. This is the map that I got from DOT for the 2026 construction program. This has not yet been published on the DOT website. It said the map was last updated in September 2025. So I would envision this will be updated and posted to the DOT website at some point here. But I did want to give you some insight into what will actually be breaking ground this summer. Versus some things on this list will end up being bid late summer or fall and not actually even go to construction. So it is actually a pretty decent construction year for us, for our local contractors from these things that are on the list. But starting out at number 1 there, Chena Pump and Chena Ridge road resurfacing, that started last summer and will continue and be finished this summer. Richardson Highway milepost 346 Chena Bridge replacement. I don't know the scope of the activities this summer, but it might be demolition of one of the bridges. I haven't really gotten an update on that, but that project was started last year and equipment's been mobilized out there. Yankovich Valley Hill Road reconstruction multi-use path. That was started last summer. I think a lot of the work was focused on Miller Hill, but they will focus on Yankovich here this summer, get that done. For new in 2026, a Beavers Doshi Slough Bridge. This is really a kind of repaving and improving the drainage around an apron leading up to the bridge so that the abutments not eroding any longer. I believe the design is done,
Complete, yep.
but it will likely be bundled with the fast improvement program and the Fairbanks area wayfinding signs.
Not anymore.
It's going out to bid standalone.
All three are separate now.
Okay, that's news to me. So that will go out to bid this spring.
Yes.
Okay. That's a good update. Chino Lake Rec Area Bicycle and Pedestrian Access, the funding for that for construction was just obligated last month. So that will go out to bid here shortly.
It is advertising.
It's advertising right now.
Yes.
Okay, so that's exciting because that will end up getting built this summer. Chino Small Trash Roundabout, that was under contract last fall, early winter. So it's already under contract and it'll begin construction this summer.
And it's the same contractor as the rest of the loop, so that's helpful for traffic control.
Same contractor as Chino Pump and Chino Ridge
Yep.
Resurfacing. Great. I don't know anything about the Terminal North apron and fencing improvements, but fast ADA improvements, that will, as I understand, will go out to bid this fall, so it likely won't be constructed until next year. Fast surface upgrades, stage 2, this is the 2025 program. That last year, I believe 8th Avenue and West Hamilton Drive were repaved. And then the rest of the projects in that bundle will be done this summer, but that's already under contract. The 2026 improvement program will be bid this fall, late summer. The one location that will likely advance this year is the Trainer Gate Road and F Street intersection. All of the locations will likely be in 2027 unless the contractor is wants to do more in September or October. Wayfinding signs, you have an idea when that will go to bid then if it's on its own?
Yeah, we're gonna get that out in a half a month or a month here or so.
Okay.
It's really simple project. I see one of the signs right there. Excited, or I mean, an example of it. It's kind of cool.
Great. University Avenue South Bicycle and Pedestrian Facility. This is a new bike ped path along South University to the charter airports that go out to rural destinations. That is already under contract as of last fall, so that will begin construction this summer. And then Old Stees is the big question mark in my mind. Old Stees has been advancing through the approval process to head to construction this summer. It's already underneath the CMGC contract with HC contractors. So we're waiting for a few approval steps at the end of this process, but I can't tell you definitively, yes, it's going to construction this summer, but cross my fingers that it will. So stay tuned on that one, but that would be another big one. But all in all, there's a lot of work all throughout our area in different areas. And it's looking to be a healthy construction season for us this year. There may be an update to this that's posted to the DOT website at some point, but that's what I know for right now. John has all the answers. I don't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you say all the 26 surface upgrades are being pushed to 27?
Pretty much that's how it's gonna end up being by adding the speed humps out at Trainer and prioritizing that. It's likely gonna push everything else out a year. Cause we just because the amount of time it takes for project delivery process to add something late. I mean, there is a chance we could also prioritize something else in that project. Is there something of concern to you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we just have 3 things in North Ball on the 26, right?
Yep. I think so,
We're gonna get none of them.
probably.
Okay.
That was, I think the policy board wanted to add and there's a priority spot to really get done, so that's how it's gonna work.
Okay, my last informational item was 2026 obligations offsets, is on page 98. This was last updated on March 2nd, so it's a little bit old because I just got an obligation report yesterday. There another 3 million has been obligated. For Chena Lake to go out to construction. So I will have a better update on this for you at the May meeting. But just want to make note on obligations, we are definitely not normal to have obligations so low this late in the year. We're at 6 months now into the federal fiscal year. But I did have meetings with DOT planning and each of the project managers that are assigned to each of these projects. That included John Retardas, Ethan Grates, and Yvette Hall. And so they provided to us dates in which these obligations will be turned in. A lot of it's May, June, July, in that time frame. There are a couple obligations that will slip till 2027. So I will be preparing an administrative modification to our TIF document, likely starting in May. Be brought forward to the technical committee of policy board in either June or July, but July is our drop dead date for obligations. So I'll just let you all know I'm tracking this as close as I can. Anything here that's not going to get obligated, you got to find a home for that money. So, anyways, behind the scenes, more homes. I know John could always.
I was gonna say, I got the homes for some money.
Yeah. Have you heard for today?
Have you heard any updates from Federal Highways or FTA on the STIP amendment that was sent in?
Have not. No, not on amendment number 2. Amendment number 2 has been approved for incorporation into the STIP by the DOT Commissioner's Office. It has been advanced to our federal partners for their final complaints, but have not received that letter yet. But on the DOT side, everything's set us up for success. All right, committee member comments. John?
How much does it cost to print these every month? Like, if y'all just like buy 10 tablets or whatever, and then
We have a
First order of
could like recoup
You
the
want
cost
to use it?
over like a year maybe of printing 400 pages?
I can't imagine the time it takes to put all these little stickers on there.
Yeah,
That's what we're at.
Queen.
that's it.
Any other committee member comments?
I wanted to say that I read that letter to the delegation and I really like it.
Okay.
And I hope the policy board appreciates it.
No other comments? We'll get a motion to adjourn. John, is there a second? Danny? Any objections?
Automatically go to.
Hearing none, we are adjourned at 1:49 p.m.
So, Warren, I'm good news, friend. Good news is.